Good afternoon, and welcome to the council meeting of Monday, April the 22nd. I'd like to start with a territorial acknowledgement. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, land on which we are broadcasting from today, is the land traditionally cared for by the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We also acknowledge the enduring presence and deep traditional knowledge and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today. And Council, I just wanted to take a moment of reflection. At the beginning of this council meeting, we pause to think about the needs of our community. May we show wisdom and compassion in all our decisions. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Council. Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Chair. I will declare a conflict with item 5D because I'm a member of that home association.
Thank you. Other declarations? Councillor Vasek.
9B this evening for the general amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Okay, thank you. And that's related to?
Place of study.
Thank you. Mayor McCabe.
Thank you. On 5C, the Glasgow Heights 2 Home Association.
Great, thank you. And I am declaring on the formal public meeting that we have this evening for Dietz Avenue. So it's item 9A, and that's related to my place of employment. Any other declarations? Seeing none, it's going to be my suggestion, Council, and I'm just going to look to the mayor and to Councillor Hanmer. Would it be possible for us to deal with everything in consent except those two, such that we deal with them together at the same time? Like, are you comfortable each missing one vote?
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that okay, Madam Clerk, for us to do that? Sorry. Yeah, I know. I'm just looking ahead to kind of the next piece. Okay, that's great. Yes, so the first item of business is approval of minutes, March 25th, 2024, moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Roach. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. So we're moving on to consent item. I'd like to deal with items A, B, E, F, G, unless there's anything that someone would like pulled. Seeing none, may I have a mover for those items? Moved by Councillor Hanmer, seconded by Councillor Bodley. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. So I'll just give the mayor and Councillor Hanmer a minute to leave the room. May I have a mover for items C and D in the consent agenda? Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Roach. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So that takes care of our consent agenda. We'll just wait for Councillor Hanmer and the mayor to return. Oops, sorry. So we are now moving on to staff reports. So our first report is the 2024 Sustainability and Climate Change Update Report. And Anna is here to give us that overview. Thank you and welcome. And I see that Sandy's also here at the staff table to likely answer any questions that might arise.
Thank you, Chair. A little bit higher. Perfect. Thank you, Chair and Council. Today I am here to discuss the 2024 Sustainability and Climate Change Update Report. This is the second in our series of annual update reports that give a summary of what the city has achieved and the progress it's made in this space within the past year. A quick shout out, we're lucky enough that today happens to be Earth Day that we get to give this report, so a happy Earth Day to everyone. I have the numbers, and we've had over 1,000 volunteers sign up to do Earth Day cleanup, to clean up over 41 different parks in the city. So huge kudos to everyone out there who's doing something today and over the weekend, and also to all the staff who helped to organize these events. So starting off, last year, the city laid a really strong strategic foundation for the work in this space. First, we have the launching of the 2023 to 2026 strategic plan, which embedded the environment, sustainability, and climate change throughout its entire framework. Second, we have the completion of the corporate climate action plan, which was just unanimously approved in January. Third, we have the adoption of corporate net zero GHG targets by 2050. Previously, our target was an 80% reduction by 2050 as compared to 2010 levels, and we are the first municipality in the region of Waterloo to set this complete target. Fourth is the 2024 Green Building Policy Update. Fifth is the integration of climate change into our asset management policy update. And lastly is the creation of the Strategic Initiatives Division, which has really worked to unify all of the great work we're doing here at the city and to push it forward. This graph represents our corporate greenhouse gas summary. All this data, the data lags about 2 years in advance, 2 years behind as it is calibrated. So we have the 2022 data, and in 2022, the city produced an estimated 5,078 tons of CO2 equivalent. That is comparable to about a 40% reduction compared to the 2010 baseline. Moving on to the corporate highlights and starting with our efforts to transition to EVs, we added several new EVs into our fleet, including Ford Lightning trucks, EV bikes, electric sidewalk cleaner, 2 electric ice resurfacers, and 4 electric UTVs. And just for everyone's interest, this is our electric sidewalk cleaner, also known as the Glutton, and that is our electric UTV. I also wanted to make a note that we have also been transitioning our small equipment, so for example, our chainsaws and other parks equipment to electric as well. On the operations side, staff have been piloting the use of cold water for creating arena ice. This is traditionally done with hot water, but there's new technologies out there now. We've also been strengthening staff capacity through training, both internally and externally. The horticultural teams have been composting leaves and cemetery flowers to make new soil that are then used for city projects. So that's what that picture is in the background. Fire has removed fossil fuel generators from the specification for fire because the equipment has gone further enough that it can now be electric if needed. And the Waterloo Public Library strategic plan is being updated to include environmental literacy skills for the residents of the community. And I also wanted to note that they have so many fantastic borrowing programs outside of books. So for example, you can borrow skates from them instead of buying your own. On the community mitigation sides, planning is piloting its terms of reference for energy study for buildings. We have also launched Generation Park last year, which is one of the first light industrial and commercial business areas in Canada to be net zero ready. The city hosted the 2024 Bike Summit just last week or the week before. This is our second time hosting. We were the first to host in 2009, so it came back 15 years later to the city. And there have been continuous improvements in our active transit network, including ameliorating sidewalks, making trails better, and expanding our biking systems. Our community partners, Climate Action Waterloo, engage in several activities throughout the community every single year. And last year, we started to pilot the new Neuron Micromobility Pilot. I'm sure many of you have seen the orange scooters and bikes are all back. Last year, out of all the rides that took place in this program, 78% of them either started or ended in the city of Waterloo. And that's a total of 143,669 rides in the city, which are pretty fantastic numbers. Last year, we also added 7 new dog waste collection containers, which removed the equivalent of 0.78 tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. I'd like to bring up this example, even though it's a small initiative, because it highlights how we all have the ability to be responsible and sustainable in all aspects of our lives, and it's also a fantastic way to ensure that our parks and public spaces stay clean. On the community adaptation side, the Waterloo Public Square got both permanent and temporary shade structures, as well as water features, and a new accessible drinking water fountain, which is a fantastic way to stay cool in one of the hottest parts of the city. The city also completed the Laurel Greenway Master Plan and started the Urban Forest Management Strategy. And lastly, one of our highway bylaws was amended, and a boulevard garden guideline was developed so that people can now have more freedom in planting on their own properties. On the community stewardship side, I really can't do parks justice with a single slide, but last year they planted 925 trees, including two new pollinator patches. The pollinator working group also planted over 1,000 native trees, shrubs, and wildflowers, and we had over 105 different stewardship activities happening through the city, and some of those gave us this beautiful picture of the Lakeshore North Community Garden that's in the background there. A smaller win, but very close to home, here in the Waterloo Public Library, an old bur oak tree was named Reap's Tree of the Year for 2023 last year. It is over 120 years old, about 24 meters tall, and 127 centimeters in diameter. So because it is Earth Day and we're really close, if you are looking to be a tree hugger today, this is a fantastic and now award-winning tree to hug. So I highly encourage it. We are also privileged to be able to do a lot of engagement and collaboration, especially with students throughout the city, both post-secondary students as well as high school students. So not only does this give us a fantastic way to partner on different projects and research opportunities and to get the latest information, it's also been such a fantastic and valuable source of youth engagement to really get to talk to youth in this space and hear their ideas and see where they want things to go. And here are just a couple different examples of some of the projects that they've worked on within the past year. So promoting sustainable behaviors and practices among post-secondary students, how to green our own city festivals, how to reduce end-of-term bulk waste in the city, and how to reduce climate anxiety in the city with how we communicate with our population. On the finance side, the budget in February redirected $200,000 between 2024 and 2026 from the Central Reserve Fund to the Climate Action Reserve Fund, or CARF. The budget also allocated 25% of final reported property tax operating surplus to CARF and redirected $500,000 from the Rim Park Investment Reserve Fund to CARF. While it's great to be able to celebrate everything that we've done in the last year, of course we have to mention a couple anticipated challenges within the next year and the years to come. The first are concurrent priorities throughout the city. The second are unforeseeable external influences, then resourcing needs, prioritization of actions, and also the acknowledgement that we are only one part of the puzzle. In order to solve this challenge, we need to work top down, bottom up, inside out, outside in, and that is going to involve significant cooperation from all levels of government, not just funding, but also legislation as well. Working on towards next steps, we will begin by implementing the short-term corporate climate action plan actions. We are developing a corporate EV charging infrastructure strategy. We will continue implementing the corporate climate change adaptation plan actions, as well as bringing forward the first report on that progress. We are hosting a community conversation focusing on the environment, sustainability, and climate action strategic priority this summer. And then lastly, I wanted to make a note, as these are annual reports, beginning next year in 2025, the reports will also include a summary of the progress on the core cap and the corporate climate change adaptation plan every year, so we can track exactly how we're doing as we progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lots of exciting information in that presentation. Questions, Council? Councillor Hanmer.
Thank you, Chair Freeman, through you. Enid, thank you very much. Always enjoy and look forward to your update. Your very last point answered one of my questions, and when are we going to be able to see the year over year? So I'm looking forward to the 2025 reporting that'll give us that kind of update. I do have 3 questions though. It's great to see the Neuron scooters back. I've had a number of residents say, where are the bikes? And I know that's a practical question, but it's interesting that mostly scooters are around. Do we have the bikes coming this year? Where though?
Thank you through the chair to the councillor. I'm actually hoping I can direct this question over to staff over there. If anyone knows, I unfortunately don't.
Thank you through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Hamner. The e-bikes are scheduled to be coming out this year. Based on the program's popularity, these scooters are generally driving more trips, and so therefore you're seeing them out more often, and just given their popularity, they're out there now.
Okay, so I can advise people that they're coming. They're part of the program for this year. They just aren't around yet?
That's correct. They will be coming.
Okay.
You'll be seeing them coming out.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. My second question is around the dog waste collection containers. In my ward in particular, they've gained in popularity, so the request I continually get is, can we have more? Could we talk, can you elaborate on that? Is it possible? What's our plan?
I can start, and then I will hand it over to Mark if that's okay. It is an action in our core cap to have more, because we'd also heard that as well. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mark for more details.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Just noting that we see the interest in the Parks Division, and it's an ongoing work plan item. So there's money in the budget for infrastructure related to that, and they just work through that accordingly to what's budgeted and lists different neighborhoods and parks. So yes, they work through that in due course. More will come, and their team's aware of it, and through due process will do so.
Is it possible, through you, Commissioner, to have even a list of where they currently are planned to be, and if people are interested, who to contact?
Through the chair to the councillor, definitely. We can provide a list of the current locations and the planned locations and who to contact in the parks team. Not a problem.
Great, thank you. I think that would be very beneficial for lots of people. And then my final question, I'm always interested when there's a comment of around what we're planning and there are unforeseeable external influences. From a risk mitigation standpoint, I'm presuming that we are thinking about what some of those could be. Is there anything that you can elaborate on? Flooding comes to mind, but I'm sure there are a few other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Through the chair to the councillor, there's a couple different angles really to take on how we can be most resilient to unforeseeable circumstances. On the mitigation side, a lot of that is surrounding what provincial or federal governments do, what happens to the energy supply, which is largely outside of our control, but we can mitigate how we react as a city, how much energy we need, what type of advocacy we can do. So by really integrating this work throughout the city, we are trying to make sure we have as many bases covered as we can on that, so that we are less susceptible and a little bit more not self-sufficient necessarily, but a little bit more able to weather a storm like that. On the adaptation end, we are working with asset management, who has included climate change in their plan, to see which areas might need it. We are also working at the moment to really just see to really be able to adapt as much as possible, not only from the city's perspective, but also to ensure that residents have the tools that they need to adapt to sudden changes in circumstances. So a couple examples of that would be even just information spreading on different types of events, what to do if you're in a flood, how to know where you're in a flood, things like that. So we are working with our neighborhood groups in particular at the moment to disseminate information through their newsletters, for example. And we are working with different departments on that end to see what would be most helpful for residents to know and how to get it out on that side. We are also always aware and looking for different programs from the FCM, for example, different grants, and different ways of determining best ways forward based on what other cities have done too. And we are also, as part of the Corporate Climate Change Adaptation Plan, there is an action in there to make sure that we are financially resilient to the changes of climate change as they come. So that is something that we will be working on within the next several years.
Great, I think that's a good message to start getting out around what should people be thinking about on those really quick, unexpected things that come up. And then from a longer term strategy, making sure that we're looking as best we can at what might be coming. So I appreciate hearing the update on that. Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Through you, Chair, I would just love to build on Councillor Hamner's question as well, and to just ask, there are probably a few things where we need adaptation and resilience strategies going forward. So just thinking about what our approach might be to extreme heat, knowing that in Western Canada, they had a lot of difficulty with the efficacy of cooling centers because they don't necessarily address at-risk populations who are the most likely to succumb to an extreme heat event. And a lot of these sort of extreme or externalized events, it's hard to prepare for them, so having the strategy up front is going to be really critical, and they do deeply affect and impact both municipal facilities and municipal services. So again, like that sort of all of government, all of the city approach to it will be really important. The other thing is that, like last year we had smoke days, which we haven't had. Most people in their living memory can't recall a summer day when they were locked inside from smoke, and it's likely that we'll experience that again in the next couple of years. So again, that's sort of the impacts on HVAC systems. Definitely in Western Canada, that's been a concern for municipal facilities. And then the other big thing is that we don't really address very much in terms of water and climate adaptation in our core cap. And I think one of the things that we're maybe walking into kind of blindfolded at the moment is our water intensity as a region. This is definitely something that we'll have to address with our upper tier government, but a fulsome water management strategy because we rely on groundwater and because groundwater is deeply affected again by drought events and our ability to recharge. And we can't, we're not drawing from the Grand River, we're not drawing from a Great Lake, and so we've got to manage what we got. So it's not just the flood events, but it's the water scarcity too that I think we need to kind of be very mindful of, and that we're sharing that resource with a number of different municipalities. So getting ahead of a few of these things and really thinking about them through that all of government lens will be really important for us going forward. Thanks.
Other questions? I had a couple. So first off, I just wanted to say thank you again for the presentation. And I really appreciated the questions that Councillor Hanmer asked, because by diverting your answers over to the departments, it helped to reinforce the fact that this is a corporate strategy, that it's not just your department, it's not you and Sandy operating in isolation to everything else that's happening. And the comments that Councillor Wright made also recognize that, because that's related to Ron's area of expertise. So I think that I appreciate that, and I wanted to kind of point that out. And I wanted to thank you too for the comments about the bike summit. One of the issues that came up that I think is really related to advancing this plan on a number of fronts is the inability for our municipality to find a really good way to cross the MTO corridor, other than like through an active transportation corridor. So I was hoping to get an understanding of, within this plan, do you foresee leveraging opportunities at FCM and AMO to actually have conversations with ministers about some of the things that are affecting our ability to be successful on our corporate climate action plan? So I've named one, and I certainly had asked Mallory to start following up on that. But I also think that it's something that it's not just the city of Waterloo. Like these are conversations that I feel we need to have with other municipalities that find themselves in a similar situation. But are you doing that? Are you looking ahead to ways to leverage conversations at AMO on this front?
To you, Chair Freeman, maybe I'll take this one, and then if I miss anything, maybe Anna can jump in. So yeah, you raise a very good point in terms of that resiliency, and part of that resiliency is further advocacy. And how do we get not so much creative, but try different channels that maybe we haven't necessarily pursued in an aggressive way in the past? And I think you're absolutely right. We've reached a point where we need to start tapping into those different ways. And certainly we are working really closely with Mallory as part of government relations and government advocacy, and what can we do. So we're really closely connected with her in terms of opportunities as they come, whether they be grants that we work really closely with finance on, and how do we advocate, whether that's to the provincial or to the federal government. Certainly, we are starting to become more creative around when we do attend these functions. Are there different things and people that we can connect to that may not be in our direct space. So a good example of that is I'll be heading to the CNAM conference in May, and I'll be connecting with the City of Edmonton staff with regards to their carbon budget and their experiences. And so the idea around trying to make those connections with people, certainly when we travel for the FCM conference, we'll be looking to do that, meeting with, also it's important to meet with different levels of staff, whether that's elected officials, whether that's staff within municipalities. It's really important for us to make those connections. And so we are working really closely with our government relations staff on that particular piece. The other piece is to locally, right? We understand that climate change is not limited to our municipal boundaries. It's really, really important that we work with our other area municipalities and the region to make sure we're not missing any opportunities. Because sometimes we all know that the more voices at a table, the louder those voices are. So certainly part of our government relations work too is working with our area municipalities. We do a bit of that already through the organizations that we're a part of. We're part of Climate Action Waterloo Region. We work really closely with Sustainable Waterloo Region. And so by working closely with our partners, we're also increasing the lines of communication. This is what we're working on. What are you working on? We've got information we can share. Oh, can you help us with this? And so I think that we're starting to kind of branch out in those ways. Now that we have a better understanding of what we're doing as a corporation, we're identifying those gaps. And we're heading into that implementation phase where the advocacy and those opportunities like AMO, like FCM, and other conferences that staff attend all play an important part of that work.
That's great. Thank you for that. And also, it's interesting, Councillor Hammer's question about the bikes. I actually thought they were all out because they were delivered to the bike summit, and we had like rafts of them at the bike summit. So I thought that they'd been entirely deployed. So I was surprised by the answer from Mr. Henderson. Yeah, I think that was the questions that I had. Was there Mayor McCabe?
Thank you. Oops, thank you very much, and thank you to councillors who've already asked some questions. And just, I mean, a couple of comments. First was just to say, you know, I think it's really important that we've continued to do this work, like through you and the rest of staff, that we've continued to do this work despite, you know, we know there's a lot of other challenges out there, but in my mind, certainly, and I think in a lot of people's minds, like issues around affordability and climate change are very interlinked, around social justice and things like that are very interlinked. So, so I think it's really critical that we continue to invest in this division and this kind of work, and so I really appreciate the passion with which you do this work, and congratulations again on winning that. Is it the Amont Award did I get that or no?
Through the chair to the mayor, yes, the case studies through the
studies.
Asset Management Ontario.
Yeah.
Yep, we have 2 of the 7 case studies, that's right.
So, yeah, which is fantastic. So it really demonstrates, you know, the work that you're doing and how important it is for us, but also the learning opportunities for some other municipalities. So thank you for that. Just a couple of things that, and I know that the report is very high level. There's no way that you could possibly capture everything that you're doing. But just was curious about some more of the, like there's big things that we're doing, and I think those are a lot of the big things that you highlighted here. But some of the smaller things, I'm just wondering if they're on your list, like the food, you know, are we looking at potentially changes in some of the, I know we don't order a lot of food, but like maybe, you know, ways to reduce food waste? Are we looking at a particular thing that kind of annoys me is all the plastic bags. I know I've talked about all the plastic bags in the garbage bags and in the recycle bins. Like, I think we really need to take a look at all those things, partly for our cost saving measures. But I just want to make sure things like that are on the list. You know, are we going to put in? Do we have more water fountains? Those temporary water fountains planned? I'd be really interested to know, kind of like the dog waste systems, where those are being planned, so we can let community know. And are we looking to invest maybe in a couple of extra e-bikes so that, you know, if staff are, need to go to a couple of meetings that are quite close, to encourage them to jump on an e-bike, like some shared sort of facilities or things like that. Are those kind of things also on your list as well?
Thank you. Through the chair to the mayor. Yes, and I apologize if I forget any of them. Starting off the food waste side. So a couple of the actions in the core cap do focus specifically on this. One of them is creating a green sustainability guide for corporate events, and a big focus of that is on the food, having compostable, recyclable containers that people can take home. Also on the culture of food when we have events and things like that, and also looking at how we can have more composting facilities available across the city, or even temporary ones when we have large events, because often that food might just be thrown out because there isn't an outlet. So we are looking at that internally, and also spreading that out a little bit more. In terms of I'm so sorry, what was the last point you just made?
Oh, I was just talking about extra e-bikes. for
Bikes,
staff,
right, yes.
yeah.
So again, another action in the core cap that I'm particularly excited about is to have, we're looking at seeing if we can do divisional passes to the GRT, the ION, and Neuron. I can't remember if I'm missing another on, but we are looking at doing that for divisions, because we have found through literature that really a lot of the times the biggest barrier is just, I don't have a card, or I don't have money on my card, or small things like that. So we are looking at ways to make staff travel, especially within the city, more sustainable and more accessible to everyone going forward.
And if I can just add to that through you, Chair, to the mayor, a couple other things just in terms of budget. Obviously, with this being a pretty new division, a year last week actually, we are looking at our budget, right, in terms of the budget that this council approved back in February for the various climate change projects and the various climate change initiatives. So we're going through in a bit of an accounting exercise in terms of, okay, we have this amount of budget for core cap, where does it need to go? Obviously 70% of our emissions are buildings, and we recognize that as the priority, but there's also those smaller things in terms of big impact, right? Because we're seeing a lot of that. It doesn't need to be a massive project to have a big impact. And so we recognize that there's smaller projects where we can help facilitate a small piece of that in strategic initiatives. With only it being two of us, it's not just the two of us doing this work. It's everybody in this room, and it's all divisions. And so how do we allocate the funds that we have to ensure that we are doing those smaller projects? Anna is also leading a number of smaller projects with more details to follow. She's connected with our BIA. She's working with neighborhood services. So there's more and more of those smaller projects. There's those types of things where you have the compost bins or those composters that sit right on your counter. I remember seeing it at a conference. Is there an opportunity for us to get some of those here at the city? So it's those smaller projects that don't have a massive price tag, but have a very big impact in terms of changing the culture, changing the behavior. And so we're trying to kind of keep track of all those things as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's really helpful. One of my other questions was going to be about neighborhood strategy, so thanks for preempting that. And just the other last thing was just if you could share, similar to the dog waste, where the other fountains are going to go. I think they're just temporary drinking fountains, so that we can, just so that we're aware of where those are going to be. Otherwise, you're only a couple of years in, or really a year with this strategic initiative. So really well done on the work, and look forward to what's to come.
That's great. Just one other comment I thought I was going to make, since Sandy had spoken about visiting other staff in other municipalities and meeting with other council. I think there's a lot of support around this council for the work that you're doing, and if you felt there was value for a member of council to join you for some of those conversations, I hope that you'll feel comfortable to ask, because I think it is valuable to understand the process that decision makers went through as well to kind of get to a yes, the process to yes. So I just thought I'd share that. So. And we have a delegation on your report, so I hope that you'll join us to hear from Kay. So I saw that Kay's here, so you have 5 minutes, Kay. Welcome.
Yeah, my name's Kay Elgie. I'm a resident of Waterloo, member of Green WR, an organization that's promoting the implementation of green development standards. And I'm, once again, very impressed. I mean, I'm more impressed every time. You know, I just think great strides are being made here. I was really excited to see the draft terms of reference for the energy studies for building up, development applications. I think that's wonderful. I shared that with some of the Green WR, and we're all really, really happy to see that going forward. But I come to you as I think I've come other times to say, this is fantastic what the city's doing, but you're 1% or maybe you're 5% of the emissions of the city. And what the heck is happening to the rest of the community? I mean, we don't even know if we're making progress. And this is what's very, very challenging, and nobody seems to be keeping track of it. Climate Action Waterloo Region is, when we ask, they are, and we've been talking to them and doing that, and they have now a dashboard, but the data is 2019. There's not updates, and I don't think they get a lot of money to do it. I mean, we've been trying to understand how to get that information, if we can help with that. But the fact is, we just plain don't know how the community's doing. But, citizens are really concerned about it. I know, like in the Uptown North neighborhood and the McGregor Albert, that came up at our quarterly meeting that Julie was at. And a couple of residents are putting together a Jane's Walk on Friday night, May the 3rd, 7 o'clock, looking at some actions people have done in the neighborhood, solar panels to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And, and those neighbors were talking about, could we do a community energy project, which comes up later, I guess, in the green building thing as an offset, possible. But I come back to the problem, and I really don't know how to solve it, and it seems so hard. I mean, we as community volunteers can't go to Climate Action WR and say, look, you've got to give us this data, because we aren't the boss of Climate Action WR. You are, although you're one of, 7 or 9 bosses, and it's just a challenge, and I don't know how other municipalities do this. I think there must be solutions out there. I don't know if there's something that, and I realize, Anna, your primary responsibility is the city, and that's great, and it's great to see the analysis and the rigor that's being applied to that. But the fact is, we don't know if transportation emissions increasing, is that where we should be as citizens, mobilizing, supporting the bikes and on these other things, or is it buildings? We know natural gas or fossil gas, whatever you want to call it, is a major contributor of that. And we found out that Enbridge will provide city-wide, municipal-wide emissions on natural gas if municipalities ask for that. So some of the municipalities in our area are starting to ask for that. So that's a bit of a measurement tool. But we just don't know, and it makes it hard for those of us who are so concerned about it to know how to move forward. And I realize it's adding more to this, but I just would really love, at some point, maybe it's an education session that we need to know how to find these answers, but I feel that's what's missing. But that's all I have to say today.
Thank you, Kay. Are you familiar with the dashboard that ICLEI puts out, which does look at full urban centers where you can look
No.
at...
So
yeah.
ICLEI has one?
Yeah, they developed it in conjunction with the United Nations.
Okay.
So it might be a place to start.
Is Waterloo in there? Waterloo region?
I thought that all municipalities, that there's like a dashboard that you can use to come up with some analysis. I mean, I don't know how refined it is, but I think there are some tools out there, and maybe I can tell you that the professor Nadine Ingram at the University of Waterloo, it was her PhD project to come up with dashboards for municipalities worldwide, and she worked with ICLEI and the United Nations.
Okay.
So, you could also reach out to Nadine, but I'm pretty confident that staff might be able to provide some links on that.
Well, if we are giving information to ICLEI, then maybe we could be giving it ourselves.
No, it's the other way around.
Oh.
ICLEI is using data that's produced
Oh, I
worldwide
see.
as it relates to greenhouse gas emissions and putting it towards municipal footprints.
Okay.
So it's not the city giving data, it's ICLEI
Okay.
tapping into open data worldwide
Hmm.
to generate algorithms that can give pretty accurate estimations of primary sources of greenhouse gas emissions within municipalities based on size.
Okay, well, that could be a start, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll look into that.
Yep,
Thanks, Diane.
no problem.
Okay.
Mayor McCabe?
Yeah, thanks through you, Chair. And just to your question, Kay, I'm about to send you a link to ICLEI that's specifically about
Perfect.
the region of Waterloo. Like it may
Okay.
drill into the city itself, but it's covering the region of
Right.
Waterloo. So I'll send you that link. And just also note that the region does some report, the region as an organization does some reporting on emissions as well, so.
I know we've been trying to connect with, I believe it's Megan Eastwood, so we've been trying to do that too, so
Right, yeah.
hopefully.
But thank you for coming
Okay,
in,
all right.
particularly on Earth Day. It's
Yes, how wonderful that you
Yeah.
do this report on Earth Day. I mean, it's just
Yeah, the
fantastic.
stars aligned, but,
Yeah.
no, I really appreciate your, the passion that you bring to this topic as well, because it's really great
Well,
to have
yeah,
community
and I'm not
advocates.
alone, believe
No,
me.
no,
I'm not
no,
alone.
no.
There's a lot of people that care so much
Yeah,
about this.
which is fantastic, so thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
And Councillor Bodley just had a question for you, Kay, just before you head out.
It was more of a comment, and I wanted you to stick around because I'm going to ask a question of staff once everyone else is done here, because we were talking about some of this stuff at the Sustainability Advisory Committee just this past week, and perhaps staff, when I ask my question of staff, will be able to provide some feedback. But I wanted to, for the rest of council, you alluded to the dashboard on climateactionwr.ca's website, and it is updated, and it lists every single action that's in there, whether it's been implemented, whether it's in the planning stage, is it on time, is it not on time, some of the tasks that are associated within each of those actions. So I know that they're trying their best there, and I did also want to note that while something that you said, I just wanted to not correct, I guess, but we are also partners on Climate Action WR. So while we are focused internally on our corporate climate action plan, we are equally focused on the areas within Climate Action WR's Transform WR plan that are where we have been highlighted as a responsible party in the implementation of those things. And that's going to lead into my question of staff in a second, unless anyone else has a question for Kay.
So I think that gets you out of Dodge, Kay, and then we can ask the question of staff.
Sorry, also thanks for coming, Kay, appreciate it. For staff, I wonder if maybe for the rest of council as well too, maybe you could provide some feedback to us about some of the progress that Transform WR has made, where we're at, and in terms of future reporting on progress that's being made with respect to Transform WR.
Thank you through the chair to the councillor, and thank you as well to Kay for coming as always. A quick the first thing I wanted to note was that Climate Action has noted that 5 years is quite a long time in between inventories to see the process, so they are looking at accelerating that timeline so we can have them more frequently as well, which is fantastic and is really appreciated by the city. The other point I wanted to make was that while we have focused internally in the last year, one of the fantastic things that we're seeing as this ecosystem is developed and internal capacity is developed is we are starting to see a lot of those community numbers come to us as we're closer to transportation, as we're closer to IPPW, as these type of connections are being made. We're starting to get those numbers ourselves, which is fantastic to see how that grows going forward. And I also wanted to note that we are completely updating our environment webpage, so it should be up and completely launched in early summer this year. So it will make it a lot easier for the public and residents to be able to find all of that relevant information in one space, instead of in several different sources. So we are really looking forward to having a more direct stream that way, and a more consistent way to spread that data to whoever would like to see it.
And maybe if I can just quickly add through you, Chair Freeman, to Councillor Bodley. So I, again, too, want to thank Kay for her passion and her support of the work that we're trying to lead here at the city. So just a couple things just to kind of add on to that. I know it may seem probably from the outside that our focus and strategic initiatives is simply on the corporate side, but thank you, Councillor Bodley, for reconfirming that our focus is on both. It's on the corporate side, but we also recognize the need that's needed on the community side. So Anna and I both attend regular climate action Waterloo Region meetings with our area municipalities, as well as Sustainable Waterloo Region and REAP Green Solutions as well, that obviously they're leading the implementation or supporting the implementation of Transform, which was approved back in 2021. There has been work over the last few years. The collaborative is in a transition period in terms of determining who else needs to be at the table. It's one thing for the area municipalities to have led the development of Transform, but we recognize we're moving into the implementation phase. And who does that include? It includes all of our community partners, whether that's from an ACDEV perspective, whether that's from our post-secondary institutions. We recognize that more people need to come to the table. But we also recognize, as Anna noted, in terms of updating our information on the website, because right now the work that we're doing in strategic initiatives and elsewhere is kind of buried underwater, I think, on our website. And so we're working really closely with our team in corporate communications in terms of kind of where should we be communicating our work, because that's something that we hear on a regular basis. It's one thing for us to do the work, but it's another thing for us to actually communicate what we're doing. And so we recognize that everything that we're working on isn't necessarily made aware to the public. And so part of that is knowledge sharing, part of that is awareness as well. We recognize too that we do have budget for the implementation of Transform. We are recognized or identified as leaders for a number of the actions. And so we also know that part of that means that we have to take the initiative to lead some of those actions. So all I can say at this point is that as a division, we're leaning more into the implementation phase of all the work that we have ahead of us. As Anna mentioned, we are doing a lot of capacity building internally, knowing that there's more work than the two of us can necessarily do. And so we are leaning towards all of our other divisions within the organization to help with this work. And the causal dashboard is an important piece of that. There may not seem to be a lot happening in terms of those causal updates, but it's really important. It's public facing. Anyone can access it. You can find out what the status of all the different actions are. And so we are identifying those opportunities where we can take the initiative and kind of move things forward for the city, both on the community and corporate sides.
That's great. Thanks so much. Any other questions, Council? Seeing none, thank you very kindly for your report. As you can see, it's something very important to this council. We're on to our green building policy and greenhouse gas progress updates. Oh, sorry, there is a recommendation here that we receive the report. My apologies. Moved by Mayor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Rowe. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Bodley. So yes, we're moving on to item 7B, green building policy and greenhouse gas progress updates. And I believe we have a presentation prepared by, or being delivered by Scott Prevost. Thank you, welcome.
Thank you. Hope everyone is doing well. Today we'll be presenting the green building policy updates and GHG projections for the city-owned facilities. So I've just got a brief agenda up there. We're going to talk about the policy review and updates for those not familiar, the city building GHG sources, natural gas and electricity, and then we'll look at the building GHG projections and a couple different scenarios that we've modeled, and then we'll talk about net zero carbon emissions and a couple of items that fall under that, including studies that we're undertaking, net metering, carbon offsets, just to give some context to the net zero carbon emissions and further reductions carbon emissions. So the policy, it applies to city-owned facilities, and it's intended to support the council's 2030 and 2050 GHG emission reduction targets. So the three sections there, you can see them. There's the new building construction and expansion, existing building major retrofits, also large capital projects, and then the bottom is the building operation, maintenance, and renewal. So the intent of these is to cover the entire life cycle of a facility, from design and construction to major capital planning to day-to-day maintenance. So you can see there's a couple points that are applicable to each section under there. For the new building construction, applies to new builds over 100 square meters. That being said, yeah, even for smaller facilities, under that threshold, we're still implementing electric-based heating and electric-based water heating. So we've got performance metrics, all net zero carbon. For the major building retrofit, it provides an outline for the study and design process, targets net zero retrofits, and then you can see that the last building operation, maintenance, and renewal, that's providing prescriptive measures. So the previous revision was in April of 2022. We updated the city-owned building GHG targets to net zero by 2050. So that's this revision that's coming forward. So and then in each section, I've highlighted several points. So we've shifted from net zero ready to net zero carbon buildings for new builds. We've consolidated the performance metrics, and we've prohibited new natural gas connections for city-owned facilities. For the existing building major retrofit section, we've got net zero emissions targets, and there's a slide that we can, I'll explain that a little bit more. And then we've added embodied carbon analysis to that. It's also added in the new construction expansion section, but we're looking at it for most of our capital projects now. And then the building operation, maintenance, and renewal section, we've updated the efficiency standards to align to the International Green Construction Code. So this is the existing building major retrofits target. A nuance I wanted to explain. On the left, you've got Rim Park, Manulife Sportsplex, and Healthy Living Center. There's a lot of parking lot space. There's a lot of potential rooftop space, and there's potential for over 5,000 kilowatts or 5 megawatts of solar installation. Compare that to AMCC, which has a smaller footprint. You have significantly less solar capacity, so around 690 kilowatts of solar in the parking lot and the rooftop space. So the intent is to not limit retrofit targets. If at RIM we can achieve net zero without any carbon offsets, realistically, then we will do so, because these are this policy is looked at by consultants when they're bidding on our work. We include it as an appendix in the RFPs that go out. So now we'll get into the building GHG emission sources, and this will lead into the projections of our own city portfolio. So we've got scope 1, those are controlled source emissions. So this is combustion on site, natural gas, fuels. There's other minor sources relative to natural gas and electricity in scope 2, waste, methane, and the refrigerant escape from cooling units. And then we've got grid imported electricity as scope 2. So these are off-site emissions from purchased energy, which is electricity primarily for us. It can also be imported thermal energy from other sites, but we don't, our facilities just import electricity. So this chart, I presented it previously in the 2022 updates, I believe, or the 2021, but it's the projection of the GHG emission factors for electricity on the Ontario grid. And so what that is showing is how many grams of carbon will be released for each kilowatt hour of electricity consumed. So you can see that vertical line, 2030. If you were to go home and turn an electric heater on, it has about, they're usually about 1 kilowatt of power. You run it for 1 hour, it will release approximately 60 grams of carbon. So you can see it's going up, and that is because the Ontario electricity grid will rely more on natural gas-fired generation for their electricity. Natural gas, that's the other source here. I just highlighted a table. Natural gas emission sources are relatively constant. The amount of energy you can extract will depend on the piece of equipment, but in that table there, I've listed the electricity emissions factors, which you can see are increasing to 2030, and then the natural gas emission factors, which more or less they are staying constant. So you can see the immediate net reduction in emissions switching from natural gas to electricity. And that's just straight electricity, electric resistive heating, and we will usually go to heat pumps because that's more efficient than electric resistive heating. This is the projection of city-owned facility GHG emissions. So it goes back from 2010. You can see that horizontal line. Those numbers are the emissions at the respective year. So our 2030 target is approximately 3,193 tons. This is modeling a business as usual. It's a fictitious scenario because we will be going to a like for modern equivalent scenario that we follow using the asset management plan. So if we were to just do that, if we were not to use that like for modern equivalent, keep with natural gas fired equipment, we're looking at approximately 5,000 tons of emissions out in 2030. So we're going to tackle that through our asset renewal program. You can see these are projects that we have scheduled prior to 2030, and so this is for facilities that have natural gas fired equipment and systems coming up, reaching end of life before 2030. And you can see on the right the target projects: electrification primarily, LED, and heat recovery. So with those planned projects, you can see that in 2030, we're approximately 3,700 tons. The green on the bottom is showing the net reduction of emissions from the natural gas, and so we reduced approximately 1,300 tons of natural gas. The electricity, as we reduce natural gas emissions, we increase electricity emissions slightly, so there's this net effect. And so you can see here, so electrification renewal projects post-2030, because in here, so we're still over our target. That was the other thing. So we're still over our target on 2030. So we need to find a way to tap into those additional emissions. So looking here, these are all the facilities which will come up for replacement post-2030 and that have natural gas-fired equipment and systems that will require renewal post-2030. So we're not theoretically tapping into those because we're not replacing them before end of life. So the reason is this chart is because in that dark red area, that are the emissions from natural gas equipment and systems on facilities that are not coming up for renewal prior to 2030. So a bulk of the emissions are coming from systems and equipment requiring renewal post-2030. Even if we removed all those emissions from systems coming up for renewal prior to 2030, you can see that we would still be over that 2030 target, which is the dashed line. So we're going to tap into these emissions by installing I'm referring to it as a phased renewal approach, but we're going to create these hybrid systems on the natural gas-fired boiler plants. So we add supplementary heat from heat pumps. So on here, this is an example of a mild day where a facility still requires heating. Your heat pump is operating. It's providing 100% of the building load. Now we're getting into a little bit of a cooler day. The building heating load is increasing, so now the natural gas boiler may need to fire on. And then in really cold situations, deep freezes, high building load, and your boiler's kicking on now. And it also coincides with temperatures where the heat pump may not be able to provide all of the building heating load. So when we look at that, when we incorporate those heat pumps in addition to those boiler plants, we are able to reduce our facility emissions below the 2030 targets. We're able to tap into that regions of emissions that on those systems and equipment that did not need to come up. So the great thing about this is that this is likely the scenario and system that will be required when those systems come up for renewal. So we're not really changing anything. We're just taking advantage of emissions reductions sooner to meet those 2030 targets. So we can also add in solar PV savings, which is a lower carbon savings measure. However, it does provide utility cost reduction. So there's some relief from that. You've got rooftop and carport solar. Currently, we've identified approximately 3 megawatts or slightly over of solar-ready area through parking lots and rooftops. So you can see here we have reduced our 2030 emissions slightly. And that's just offsetting the emissions associated with electricity. So we completed a detailed GHG study at AMCC. It was a study funded through FCM. It required a 10-year plan to reduce GHG emissions by 50% and a 20-year plan to reduce them by 80%. So this was completed 2 years ago. There's multiple pathways multiple pathways modeled, and the two I will highlight are the minimum cost and the comprehensive scenario. And the reason I'm highlighting this is that the minimum performance, which focuses mostly on electrification and solar, we are achieving a 77% reduction in emissions. at a cost of about $19,000 per ton of carbon saved. When we go to the comprehensive scenario, that includes building envelope, geothermal. We're greatly increasing the cost, but we aren't seeing a corresponding increase in GHG savings. So how we've got that scenario where we've got the minimum cost, we've electrified the building, we've installed solar. What is an opportunity to further reduce our emissions? One is carbon offsets. You can purchase carbon offsets now, which would be cost less per ton than those additional measures, those additional high capital measures. But potential future arrangements could include some form of city-funded local emission reduction projects, such as funding for heat pumps or electrification projects, which have a high impact. So those dollars would be better spent putting those out. And the benefit of those, it reduces the city and the community emissions. The other piece is net metering and virtual metering. So solar PV net metering contracts, currently you cannot be credited for more electricity than you import from the grid. So basically what this means is that your solar PV array has to produce as much electricity as your facility consumes. What net metering would allow is for a facility that is capable of producing more electricity than the facility consumes, is that you would then be allowed to be credited for that additional electricity exported to the grid, and then you could use that and you could allocate it to other facilities which may not be able to host or support solar PV. So, and then the net metering is governed by Ontario Regulation 54105. It's delivered through ANOVA, but they do not control that. So, but currently virtual net metering is not allowed. So our next steps, we will initiate our transformational projects adhering to the new green building policy. We've got detailed GHG studies ongoing or about to be undertaken for many city facilities. We're going to implement that phased renewal system to tap into those emissions, and then we will continue to apply for provincial or federal grants targeting GHG projects, as well as leveraging FCM funding. And that concludes my presentation.
That's great, thank you. Any questions? Staff? Yep, go ahead, Councillor Bodley.
Thank you, through you, excuse me, through you, Chair Freeman. Thank you, Scott. I learn something new every time you come present something to us about green buildings, which is great. So you referenced there's sort of three spots here: net zero construction for new buildings, retrofits, and then the third one is on operations. So in that section, it's really speaking to sort of end of life or scheduled replacement of equipment or systems components. And I presume that a lot of the decision-making around when we're going to make those changes is in conjunction with our asset management plan, or perhaps it's because we have unplanned failures. But I'm wondering if you could maybe highlight for us, a little bit more about the decision-making process on some of this operational stuff. And I ask it through the lens of, if there was a clear sort of financial business case for replacement, so if the payback period in terms of savings financially were to be short enough that it would justify doing this, even though the equipment hasn't necessarily reached its end of life, or if there were sort of significant GHG reductions that we could gain from replacement before it's reached end of life. Are we considering doing that? Is there business planning that we look at on those things from an operational perspective for items that are not yet end of life? I guess I'm just looking for some insight into how that day-to-day decision-making happens.
Through the chair to the councillor, yeah, absolutely. So I think that it mostly relates to the second portion about the high-impact GHG savings. The ROI on converting from natural gas to electricity, it would be so drawn out that you would reach the end of the life of the piece of equipment, likely before you would start to see that financial ROI. For example, a heat pump with a natural gas fired backup burner that you may install in your house is right now the most cost effective, because when it's very cold out, your natural gas burner is firing, and that's when your heat pump can't operate, and you would switch to electric resistive heating if it were involved, if it were equipped in that piece of equipment. So The high-impact GHG portion is that when we look at these projects, and we've got multiple projects ongoing, at AMCC, for example, we've got 2 rooftop units which are not quite at the end of their life. However, they do have R22 refrigerant, which you can no longer obtain. It's been phased out, so it becomes a maintenance issue to get that refrigerant, but it also happens to be a high-impact measure that we're converting that natural gas-fired heating to an electric heat pump. So there's usually more than one factor that comes into play. Almost always, if there's another project going on at a facility and we can tap in and replace those furnaces, even if they aren't at end of life, then that's something that we would be looking at doing. That phased renewal that I've referred to as adding the heat pumps to the natural gas boiler plants, that is a high impact measure, and those boilers have not reached the end of the life. We don't know the ultimate design yet. It's very difficult to fully electrify those boilers, because then that would trigger likely a panel upgrade and then a service upgrade, and then Innova has to look at if they can even supply that much electricity. So we are looking at those at multiple levels.
Just a follow-up, if I may, through you, Chair Freeman. So yeah, I thank you for that. I appreciate that the payback period on something like a heat pump is, you know, often 10 to 20 years. It's very lengthy. So I guess my question is more on the operational side. Do staff see any like low-hanging fruit opportunities still? Things like destratification fans, air curtains, these types of lower impact operational measures that have shorter payback periods. Do we feel like we have exhausted all of those at this point in time? Are those being considered? Any feedback you could provide there from an operational perspective?
Through the chair to the councillor, absolutely. An example that I can think of is that we winterized some facilities instead of just running the heat all winter. So that was working with maintenance and working with other divisions and seeing if they needed heat in that facility. So it was a couple buildings at Waterloo Park. So that provided an immediate payback, because now we're no longer heating that. So on the GHG side as well as the utility side. As we start to expand our controls, so we're working on developing a city-specific control specification for projects, we will have an easier time identifying and looking into the kind of those low-hanging fruit controls measures, 100%.
Any other questions, council? Mayor McCabe.
Thank you, through you, Chair, and thank you, Scott. Like Councillor Bodley said, there's so much to learn, and every time you come here and talk to us, you provide more information, so it's really helpful. I'm curious about a couple of things with respect to the carbon offsets and alternative solutions. Mm-hmm. So where does like our urban forest fit into that in terms of carbon offsets and the work we do with planting trees, and we're going through a consultation process to see about planting more trees and different types of trees. Where does that fit into some of the carbon offset part measurements that you're doing?
Through the chair to the mayor, it does. It's that type of project. If you were looking to quantify those internally with the city, then that's something that would probably be more feasible. Right now, there is no market for GHG cap and trade. For example, like the cap and trade system in Ontario doesn't exist. It's just the federal carbon charge that's applied. So to quantify those, I think probably a more realistic and impactful way would be for the city to quantify those tons of savings from those trees themselves and just have that number. If it was to be credited, then there would be a certification process to go through a third party who can kind of do the accounting and make sure that yes, that tree is staying there, and yes, that those tons of carbons are actually being retained on there. So there's different certifications, there's different ISO certifications, and there's different third party certifications that you could potentially seek out. I'm not sure if that's being sought out currently.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful information. The other question that I had relates to Councillor Bodley's question about the, the end of life of boilers and that, and you showed us the cost differential with like heat pumps versus geothermal. But does that include like heat pumps and gas? Like, combined, like the cost of both? Because the geothermal unit, or the geothermal process, does it need to have a gas hookup as well? Like, I'm just wondering if the cost, in the way that it's been calculated, is it including that with heat pumps, you're putting two things together, like the gas and the heat pump, where geothermal might stand on its own? Does that make sense?
Through the chair to you, Mayor, yes. So for a geothermal system would be the least cost from an operational perspective to operate that. Something like a heat pump with a backup gas furnace is much more feasible. So to look at geothermal, you have to, there's a lot of things that need to fall into place. A, the location within the region, and then B, your systems within the facility. So if the facility has a large number of rooftop units which are just distributed, it's just packaged equipment, then installing a new geothermal system there, you would install the geothermal, you would install a mechanical house, you'd install all of the equipment, and then you'd be looking at running all new piping out to the equipment. So geothermal typically has a higher capital cost on the retrofit scenarios, which is why it doubles the cost basically, but it doesn't double those GHG savings. So that was that comparison from the minimum performance to that comprehensive in the table there. But from an operational perspective, on a new build, if the ground conditions are suitable and they can drill it, then a geothermal would be the least cost from a utility perspective.
Okay, so new builds, if we're contemplating new builds, that geothermal, I know there's the regional bylaw, which also needs to be looked at, but, because I suspect it's out of date for large areas, particularly in Waterloo, but, so if we were doing a new build, then geothermal would be the least expensive.
Absolutely, we would look at geothermal for a new build.
Okay, thank you for that. And just, I don't know if this falls into like your bailiwick, or if it's, I'm curious, or if not, so if it's not, then that's fine, but I'm just curious about district energy systems, and if we're looking at, or how, like, is that something we could look at different parts of our neighborhoods that already exist, or new neighborhoods that are going to be built, or would that be something that falls under your division, or is that something that would be more for like some of our community partners?
Through you, Chair, to the Mayor, for city facilities, that wouldn't fall under kind of our purview or my purview specifically, and the geographical location, like kind of dispersed city facilities, would not lend themselves to interconnect to each other with the district energy system. But if a district energy system were to be looked at, it would be either a third party or a region, because then someone has to operate it and maintain it, and they have to, have those buildings connect into it as well. So there'd be those requirements.
Councillor Wright.
Thanks. Just to share a question. So I'm fascinated by virtual net energy, and so I was just really curious. It's mentioned briefly in the report. There was a consultation going on last fall, so it sort of looks like maybe the Ontario government is opening up some flexibility on it. If there's a chance for council to learn more about that in the weeks and months to come, I think we'd all be fascinated by it, and you could probably walk us through how impactful it might be. Thanks.
That's great, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we did have one delegation. So I understand that Mr. Ratz wanted to provide a delegation. So welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. By the way, you're all really polite people. I really enjoyed meeting you, the ones who said hi. So I actually disagree with all kinds of stuff you guys say, but I like the whole intention. You're obviously trying to make the world a better place, and that's good. And I'm trying to meet in the middle here with an idea I have to kind of kill two birds with one stone. So the two birds would be housing. Housing is insane. And the other one would be the 15-minute city idea. In its current format, I don't agree with it whatsoever, but I have kind of a bit of a more radical idea that maybe we could, like, I live in Beechwood, and I saw what you guys did with that homeless kind of area up by the dump. I think that's a pretty cool idea. And it seems to be working for them and for the neighborhood around. It's not really affecting Beechwood in a negative way, so that's nice. But this is my idea. It's super, it's just very rough. I learned of this meeting today. I drew this up a few months ago, and this is a very, very rough drawing. But I haven't had the time to kind of get this going. But there's a whole movement down in Taos, New Mexico, with earth ships, and it's pretty hippy-dippy, but it also solves quite a few problems all at once. It solves a trash problem. So basically, an earth ship, I'll run it down really quick. It's a south-facing, just one big south-facing window. It's efficient in that it's basically charged by the sun for heat. The pitch of the glass is actually at an angle, so it cuts off at a certain time. Anyway, I won't get too far into it, but the back wall is built out of tires, old tires, and that's a huge problem. I don't know if you saw that video of 50 million tires being burned all at once out in the desert, but that's pretty freaky to know that happens, you know what I mean? So if we could kind of use tires to build these houses, that'd be awesome. But basically, the rest of it is built out of like a cob type of material. It's very efficient, very, very interesting feel to each house, like, you know, kind of like a hug. But this is my idea for basically an earthship neighborhood, excuse me. So this is 1,000 earthships, or 1,000 units for people to live in. So there's a legend on the other slide, but yeah. So the yellow is solar arrays, you know, to power everything. Then you have the squares that are the earth ships. You got the rain catchment system at the top of the whole neighborhood, and then kind of in between, basically like the little streets in between where these units would be, or the roofs or whatever, would be the gardens and the play area. And then down at the bottom, actually, beyond where you can even see, is actually like a farm. So you have a totally self-sustained system. And this is kind of like, I drew it like this because it's like, you know, a perspective drawing. I'm not the best artist, I'm an electrician, right? So, but yeah, just a totally, it's basically a scaled up earthship. It's a scaled up earthship neighborhood. So just an idea, if you really want to tug on the heartstrings of people who want or I guess who don't want the 15-minute city that is being proposed. Yeah, I think a lot of the ideas are a little bit insane that are being thrown out there, a little bit non-human. This is like, you know, you're growing your food, you're living with all your neighbors, and yeah, that's it. So.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. I'm not sure I can tell you that this council is not making decisions around 15-minute neighborhoods.
Okay, well.
Yeah, but, I mean, we have planning documents that talk more broadly about how we're planning the city with the intention to allow opportunities for live, work, and play, but that does not mean closing roads. So, yeah.
Oh, with the 15
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah. So, was there any questions of staff or Councillor Rowe?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank you for coming and presenting your idea, because I think it's important for staff and for council to hear the ideas from the citizens and to just open up our thinking in a different way. So thank you.
I know that Councillor Bodley, you wanted to make some quick remarks for staff to close off this item. Perhaps you'd like to move the recommendation?
I would love to move the record. Sorry, I was reading about earthships on Wikipedia.
Yeah, I was looking at earthships as well. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I'd be happy to move the recommendation. And I just wanted to highlight for council that we have a letter in our packet from the Sustainability Advisory Committee, and I wanted to publicly thank SAC for the work that they helped assist staff with on the development of the green building policy, and appreciate that they provided that recommendation to us. And with that, happy to move it. Thank you, Chair Freeman.
Is there a seconder for this recommendation? Councillor Wright, and all those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to facility transformational projects, partial funding release request. This was also Scott's piece. There's no presentation. So was there any questions on this piece? Moved by Councillor Vasek, seconded by Councillor Roach, sorry, I apologize. I'm just looking this way. I just won't call anyone late for dinner. That's what my mom used to say. Get everyone's name mixed up. But all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is the 2024 Business Improvement Area Levy, and we do have a presentation from Jais. Jais, did you... welcome.
Liz and Mayor McCabe. So thanks for having us here. I'm the Executive Director for Uptown Waterloo BIA. I just want to talk quickly about what's going on with the BIA. So our Uptown vision and strategy is to create a distinctive Uptown that provides a safe, lively, accessible, and attractive place to live, learn, work, shop, and play at all times. It's a sense of place in which future growth develops in a harmony with city's historic character and attributes, guide our actions by considering what is beneficial for our people and the environment that we live in, and achieve this vision through collective collaborative effort. So our strategic pillars are Uptown identity, Uptown leadership, and Uptown growth, and a strong voice for Uptown. So the first identity is is Uptown identity, and it's to increase the vibrancy here in Uptown, and we do that through different placemaking projects. We attract unique businesses working with our landlords and developers as much as we can in trying to have a similar vision, and celebrate the milestones of our members who've been here for a long time. I don't know if the volume works. Technology. So that was a drone video that showcases the heart of Uptown as part of the Heritage Green project. So, and it was done really well, where it also coincided with the GRT and LRT train going by, so which was really cool. So the first one, when we are talking about the heart of Uptown and the Heritage Green, it was a public space revitalization that the BIA worked with the city. It was collaborative grants that we received. It's now become a really cool Uptown landmark, and obviously it's a collaborative effort that's been really successful. And the BIA, working along with the city and the region, we want to do more of these to make Uptown the place to be in this region for our citizens. The slats on Princess and Uptown Forest. This is a project that was over the last few years. We had it on Princess. As you could see, the beautiful photos, what we were able to create, again, working with the City of Waterloo staff who helped us, guided us in making this happen. So it's a temporary public space improvement. Obviously, great Instagrammable photo opportunity, and it's an outdoor comfort space where we held a lot of events, and it's also creating that microclimate because there's a lot of cinder blocks around, and by creating greenery there, it brings a positive effect for us. Yeah. The other uptown identity projects are Dominion Lane, which is right behind King Street. We had a lot of restaurants working with those restaurants, creating a patio. So in the summer, there's additional revenue opportunities and creates employment and has a positive economic impact. We are currently working with the Ready team on a 2S LGBTQ+ banner project that's going to happen for the Pride Month in June. And we are also working with the city and the region, and again, a lot of patios that are going to be opening up pretty soon, and with some of the new restaurants coming into town, that's going to create great hospitality opportunities for our citizens here in the region of Waterloo. The milestones. So Wordsworth Bookstore is celebrating 40 years, Ethel's 30 years, Barton Factory Arts 30 years, Cowboys and Angels 25 years, Urban Corner 25 years, King Street Cycles 20 years, Loop Clothing 20 years, Sweet and Savory Pie 10 years. One that I left out there, Frack Jewelers is 105 years. So when we talk about these businesses being in Uptown, it's a lot. It's their work ethic, their resiliency, all of these businesses continually reinventing themselves to do their best and making this a place to be for people to come up. So we cannot reminisce. Last week, Sweet and Savory Pie company celebrated their 10 years. I know a few of the folks, Mayor McCabe, Councillor Wright, a few other councillors were there, and some of the city staff as well, which is phenomenal. It's important for us to celebrate these businesses being here, especially in retail spaces. When you look at 25, 30, 40 years, that could be equivalent to 100, 150 years of life because of everything that they go through in challenges. Uptown leadership and growth. So we here over the years, thanks to Patty Cable and then Tracy Van Kelsbeek, and I'm walking in their footsteps with my team to make things better here. The increasing member participation in the last 12 months has been phenomenal. You look at Treats in the Street and Egg Hunt, over 30 businesses participated in it. Look at Comfort Food Crawl, 14 restaurants participated in it, and Winter Wonderland, over 30 of the business participated in it. We had Minister of Small Business come here for a visit. We'll talk a little bit more about it, and we had an opportunity to have a roundtable with few of our members, our councillor, mayor, were part of it, and we visited a lot of the businesses, like the comic store, who's been in business 37 years, and some of the new female-led businesses in town. So it was a great opportunity for the minister to interact with the new businesses and what they are doing. So we worked with the Small Business Center here with Kesenia to help execute the Black Entrepreneurs Market. That was in September as part of our night market complimentary, so which was great. We are working with city and the region on waste management. I'll talk a little bit about it later on. Social media engagement continues to increase. Our attendance at the events continue to increase. And through market, we are also providing a lot of opportunities for vendors within our region who have an opportunity to sort of do a pop-up to see if their ideas will work, and then they could take that into the next level if they want to start their own shop. Talking about marketing and social media, these are numbers which are phenomenal. We have accumulated 59,000 followers between our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, which is great. The 2.4 million impressions, that's something important, but the 62,000 engagement, that's folks from this region engaging with us through social media, wanting to know information, get information, and to be part of the events and stuff, so which is really amazing. And those video views overall are through our website and through YouTube and TikTok, and over 50 communication with our members on a regular basis. Treats in the Street and Uptown Egg Hunt, just to give some examples. We executed the event for the egg hunt with activation in the square, which was amazing. Again, both of them, over 30 businesses, not only from King Street, businesses on Albert and Regina as well, and each of them average over 3,000 visitors in a 3 to 4 hour event. These are family-friendly event, open to everyone, and it's a phenomenal way to bring people into the core of Uptown here that benefits our retail and hospitality and other businesses. Uptown Night Market again in the upper parking lot and Princess, and we had over 50 vendors. So out of the 10 markets, we had to cancel 5 of them in the morning on the day of because of rain, information, weather, and in some of them it didn't end up raining. So we are happy that we've been able to work with Public Library and the city transportation team to move the night market this year under the canopy, under the cover. So we don't need to, our outreach manager, Don, doesn't need to cancel the market on a morning by 10 a.m. looking at a weather when by 4 p.m. it doesn't rain. So we are happy, excited to host the markets. So over 50 vendors, over 12,000 visitors, and we raised over $2,500 for the charity. So we, as a BIA, we don't charge the vendors when they come to the market because a lot of them are obviously small businesses. What we request is they pay a $50 paid forward fee to the charities in the region. So Food Bank is one of the big ones. Humane Society is one of the other big ones, so which is great, and all of the vendors happily donate that. And when you look at $50, it's a minuscule amount, so that they don't need to stress about trying to break even of what they paid as a vendor fee. Oktoberfest Mayor's Market. This is a collaborative event with the Mayor's Office, City of Waterloo, and also Oktoberfest, which was phenomenal. This year we had over 60 vendors, over 3,000 visitors, and looking to make it even bigger and better next year. I know Mayor McCabe has a vision for it to be in the square along with Willis Way, so we are looking forward to working on that. Winter Wonderland and Tree Lightning, another sort of landmark event for Uptown Waterloo. As you can see, that's a photo from this year, which is phenomenal. Another project that we work on with City of Waterloo staff who work with us, help us, and get this all put together. So over the 2 days, over 5,000 visitors, over 30 businesses did special promotions, and we had over 48 vendors. And again, in this one as well, over $2,400 raised directly for the local charities. Comfort Food Crawl. The tickets were sold out in 5 days because there's a limited number of tickets that we sell, and raised over $6,500, 13,170 meals, and 14 Uptown businesses participated in it. So we are looking to grow this next year with more participation, a couple of more venues, so we could sell some more tickets because people did want to come buy tickets on the day of. Unfortunately, we can't accommodate that because of how the event works. Waste management and beautification, this is an interesting one. So some of those photos are from Christmas, New Year, and St. Paddy's Day. We are the BIA, we went above and beyond with there's no garbage pickup being here in the core on Sundays. We wanted to ensure that on Christmas holiday and New Year's holiday and the St. Paddy's Day Sunday, that our Uptown looked cleaner and welcoming rather than piles of garbage bags there. So some of our landlords helped us put a bin, and the businesses were able to take the garbage there. I know this is a unique one that we are working with the city and the region, something that we do need to solve in the future because being a great place that Uptown is, we don't want to have the first impression that when folks are walking up, that what they see is black garbage bags filled with stuff.
JS, I just want to touch base. You're kind of over time, so I'm just
Okay.
trying to see if you're near the end or.
That's the last slide.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Strong voice for Uptown is we've done outreach with the universities because we got 75,000 students, over 75,000 students between September and April. We want to work with them. We want to encourage them to come up, even the daytime. We work with the Working Center on Discovery Program. The social worker comes through to work with folks who are on the street and how we can help them. We are in communication with our members on a regular basis through emails, but in personally as well. And obviously, Uptown Safety, working with municipal enforcement and Waterloo Regional Public Police Services. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation and the reminder of all of the fun events and great work that you're doing with the businesses uptown. Thank you so much for that. Questions, Council? Councilor Wright.
Thanks, and just want to highlight that Jane and Dawn and Diego are here as well in the gallery, so kudos to your team for just being absolutely everywhere all the time. I mean, it's like barely a day that goes by where I don't run into one or more of you. And just the sheer amount of hustle that's going on from the BIAs is truly impressive. We went through such a tough time uptown between the LRT construction, followed by the pandemic, and the way that it has bounced back and how thriving it is truly amazing to see. We do have issues, and we really look forward to partnering with you and hearing your ideas about how to make things better. But wow, has it ever sprung back? And there are more people uptown than I've seen in the 12, 14 years that I've lived uptown. And I think that's one of the main considerations that I want to actually ask you about is as we grow and we have more and more people uptown, how can the city better enable the BIA to do that work to make uptown a really thriving place?
More money. We are grateful that with the senior leadership team and Councilor Wright, yourself, Mayor McCabe, and other councillors, that we are able to approach you and work with you, and we want that. And I know there may be times that we could be adversarial, yet both of us are looking for the best. Uptown is part of the economic engine for the region. I know there's a lot of manufacturing and everything other way, but the retail and all of the new shops and everything coming up, we need to work with them. We need to work with the landlords, and we need to make this a place to be with more events, more placemaking, more public realm. So an opportunity to create more spaces like Heritage Green, where it's a third space. So we need more third spaces in the region, in the city, for folks to come, hang out, spend time together, grow as community together. So we are doing that, and one of the things in the budget we focused on is more money toward assisting cultural events. And we are working with a lot of groups, a lot of people. I'm doing a lot of outreach, and you're going to see that this June and July, there's some new events that are coming up to Uptown. And we are a team of 4, that's mighty, and we work with people and just uplift them. And when they could do it, we trust in them, and we provide them with the resources we have. So.
That's great. Any other questions? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. There is a important recommendation in the council packet for the team. Is there someone looking to move that? Councilor Wright, seconded by Councilor Hanmer. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. So thank you again for all that you do. We're on to item E, 2023-24 grant update. Michael Pugliese is here. If you have any questions, council, keep going with the grant applications. So there's a recommendation here to receive. Okay, Mayor McCabe, yeah.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I know it's fairly recent since the federal budget came out, but I'm wondering if you had any additional details on the additional housing accelerator funds that went in, that were announced in the budget.
Through Chair Freeman to the mayor. Thank you for the question, Mayor. I would say at this point in time, we don't have a lot of information on what the Housing Accelerator top-up fund would look like. It's something we'll closely monitor. So as staff noted in the federal budget update, we see it as hopefully an opportunity and one we'll monitor, but at this point in time, we're not exactly sure what that would look like. And there are some other grants in there as well that we'll be monitoring closely, and there was some indication that there would be a green inclusive community building phase 3. And so we're very excited about what that might look like for some of our GHG projects as touched on earlier today. So with a lot of these programs, they're announced in the budget and they do take some time before they do come forward to us to apply for, but we'll be closely monitoring and we'll be back here with reports seeking approval if the program's a fit.
Thank you. That's just one that's moving particularly quickly, so I wondered if they might have had some additional information, but thank you very much.
Any other questions? There's a recommendation to receive the report moved by Councillor Bodley, seconded by Councillor Vasek. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. So the next is item F, disposition of city-owned lands, Millennium Boulevard remnant land parcel. Justin's here to answer any questions if we have them. Any questions, council? Seeing none, may I have a mover for the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Rowe, seconded by Mayor McCabe. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. And we are now, I should just double check. I guess we'll ask for a declaration of pecuniary interest tonight. I'm sorry, Councillor Rowe, I didn't ask again when you returned. I figured that you would jump up and down if there was something. Yeah. Okay, great. So yeah, we're recessed until 6:30. Thank you. Have a good meeting tonight.